Hi book lovers, it's Jenny at Julia Baby Jen, and this is the coffee book tag.
Now let me hold your hand.
So I just came across this tag and decided to tag myself because I love coffee. So good. All kinds of coffee, tea, all of it. Love it. Iced, cold, doesn't matter. I thought this would be a really fun tag to do. So here we go. We have Black. Name a series that's tough to get into but has die-hard fans. And for this one, I picked Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, which I adore. I didn't have very much trouble getting into it, but a lot of people I know have. They really didn't like the first half all that much, but they love the second half. Or I've heard a lot of people who weren't thrilled with this book but love the second book. So I think it's one of those series that takes a little bit to get into. Sarah J. Maas in general, I think, is that way. I had no trouble getting into it. For some reason, she and her writing and I just click. I love her writing so much. I like anything she writes. But some people I've heard do not. So I just think for some people it's a little harder to get into. But it does have all her books are, she has very big fan base. She has a lot of diehard fans. So I thought this was perfect for Black. Peppermint Mocha. Name a book that gets more popular during the holidays or the winter. For this one, there's a few different ones I thought of, but I picked My True Love Gave to Me, edited by Stephanie Perkins. The bind-up of, well, this is an anthology of short stories, romance stories centered around Christmas or the holidays. And it's really good. I really enjoyed it. These are definitely worth reading if you want a little Christmas flavor this year, but don't want a long book. You can just read a few stories or read all of them. I think there's 12 in here. They're all pretty good. There's some I liked better than others. There's some that are really amazing. So yeah, this is my Peppermint Mocha. Chocolate. What is your favorite children's book? My favorite children's book, this was easy, On the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is actually my top 5 favorite books of all time. I love all the Laura Ingalls Wilder's books, but there's something about this book that captivated me as a child. And it might just be nostalgia, but when I reread it, which I've reread it several times, I love this book. There's just something about it. It's such an interesting story because they're living, her and her family, she's very young, I think she's 6 or 7 in this, and they're living in a little dugout under, like a sod house under the ground, and it's a one-room sod house, and it's kind of a temporary home until they can move further west. So I thought it was so interesting. The adventures that they have in here, it almost doesn't seem like it could be real, but it's just wonderful. I love this book. Double Shot of Espresso. Name a book that kept you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. I picked the Dead of Night series by Jonathan Mayberry. There's Dead of Night and Fall of Night. This is a prequel duology of First Night. If you've read the Benny Amara series, Rotten Ruin. So this is the actual sequence of events of how the apocalypse happened, how the zombies came to be. It centers around this small little town. I can't remember, is it in Ohio or something? It's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. And this is an adult one. It's very graphic. But yes, it kept me from the edge of my seat from the beginning to the end. It was worth reading. If you're a big fan of Jonathan Mayberry's Betty Mara series, I think this is really good. These are really good reads. Starbucks. Name a book you see everywhere. Well, I picked this one, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Not only do I see it on BookTube and book bloggers and everywhere else, it's in the stores everywhere. You can't go anywhere that sells books and not see this book, like several copies. I was in Walmart the other day just looking to see what they had for books, and they have so many of these copies tucked behind all the other books. It's crazy how many of these they printed, because I thought everybody bought one, but I don't know. So anyway, yes, this is my Starbucks. At Hipster Coffee Shop. Give a book by any author a shout out. I picked Strings by David Estes. David Estes is a good friend of mine. He's one of my favorite authors, and this is one of my favorite books by him. It's a standalone. It's a retelling of Pinocchio. I guess I should say it's a sci-fi retelling of Pinocchio, taking place current day or maybe a little bit in the future. There's a lot of technology. It's really good. It's for something that's sci-fi. It's so beautiful and so lyrical, and I love this book. Next is Oops, I accidentally got a decaf. Name a book you were expecting more from. I picked Icons by Margaret Stohl. This had a great premise. I like Margaret Stohl's writing. I like her books. So I was really expecting a lot out of this, and maybe that was my problem, that I had high expectations. It wasn't a bad book. I enjoyed it, but it just fell a little short from what I was expecting. I am going to continue with the series, though, because I do want to know what's going to happen. Perfect Blend. Name a book or series that was both bitter and sweet, but ultimately satisfying. And there was only one choice for this one for me. The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. If I could go through and pick a perfect book, this would be it. There is nothing negative I have to say about this book. Everything about it, word for word, is perfect. It's beautiful. It is very bittersweet. It will make you cry at the end, but it's just this amazing story, and one that I think was really did need to be told. It's historical fiction. It's about a girl who's living in Germany. She's German. She's not Jewish, and her family is hiding a Jewish man in their cellar. And there's a lot more to it than that. She also steals books during the Nazi regime. She's just amazing. And then the best thing about this is the narrator. It's told from the point of view of death itself. And it's just amazing. And I would never expect death to be such an amazing point of view or character, but it's done wonderfully in here. So this was my Perfect Blend book. Green Tea. Name a book or series that is quietly beautiful. For this, I also picked Marcus Zuzak. I picked I Am the Messenger. This is an adult story. It's a standalone, and it is very different than The Book Thief. Completely 180 from it. It's a current day story about a normal guy, and it's not beautiful in the way of The Book Thief. There's plenty of, harsh language and weird things happening. The main character in this one is really a pretty good guy. But there's all kinds of things happening around him. The story itself is just amazing. And by the end of it, it is just amazingly beautiful. But it kind of sneaks up on you. And I was hooked from it from beginning to finish. It's one of my favorite books ever. If you have not read this one, I definitely recommend it. Chai Tea. Name a book or series that makes you think of faraway places. There are several that make me think of faraway places, but I picked Anne and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. I think half the appeal of this book for me was the fact it took place in Paris and all the little details. Anna is a diehard movie fan, and she goes to all these little tiny theaters, sees all these classic movies, and it just made me want to go to Paris so badly. And then all the little bistros and cafes, and she spends a lot of time wandering around the streets of Paris, and it's just made me want to go there so badly. This is seriously, I have an obsession with Paris. A lot of people know this about me. Never been there. I will be there at some point. But this is the book, I think, that really made me love Paris. And it's all the little details. I'm sure it'd be fun to see all the big tourist places, but I just want to wander around the streets of Paris and get the whole flavor of the city. So yeah, this is my chai tea. And the last one is Earl Grey. Name your favorite classic. For this, I picked Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Another easy one for me. This is definitely my favorite classic. I've been obsessed with this book since I was in 8th grade and read it for the first time. It's one of those books that I actually have a paperback on my nightstand, and if I just need to read a little bit without thinking, I pick it up, flip it open somewhere. I don't read it usually from cover to cover. It's so big. I just start reading somewhere, and I can pick it up and open a page and know exactly where I'm at the book. So I just love this whole story. I think the appeal for me is, of course, the historical factor and the whole war thing. It's just heart-wrenching. But also Scarlett O'Hara herself and Rhett Butler. They're the most interesting characters. I love Scarlett. She's like the world's first feminist. She is so flawed, and you just love her all the more for it. She's very selfish, very vain, really does think only of herself most of the time. But there are times where she does really think about her family and her loved ones, and it comes through. She is very hard. She starts off very sweet and adorable, but as her life goes on and she lives through the war, she becomes very hard-edged. I'm going to do whatever I want no matter what anybody says, which is so not what the time period was at all. She was really ahead of her time in a lot of ways. And I love how even though a lot of things she does are all screwed up and pretty wrong, she does it with really good intentions a lot of the time. I just think she's such an interesting character. And then you have Rhett, who is just, he's like the world's best rake. I mean, so hot and so gorgeous, and he is also very vain and also very selfish. They are so much alike, two peas in a pod, but he's a little more grown up. He's come more into himself, and he actually does have a really good heart that comes out in weird ways. I think a lot more than Scarlett does, and there's certain people in this book that he really respects and appreciates and sees the good in them, and he tries really hard to make sure that nothing goes wrong for them. So he's just a really interesting character too. So I don't know if you've ever read Gone with the Wind. It's one of those series, or one of those books that's a very good classic, but not a lot of people from the more recent generations, I think, read anymore. It's worth reading, in my opinion. It's a monster of a book. You have to take a lot of it with a grain of salt because it is told from the Southern point of view, and the way it's told, it makes slavery not sound that bad. Of course, it was terrible. And it's true. Were plantation owners that were not terrible to their slaves. They're pretty few and far between, though, and whether you were kind to them or not, they were still slaves. So it's still a terrible, terrible thing. So you have to kind of swallow that down and ignore it as much as possible. You have to remember that also that was what these people were raised with, that it was okay to have slaves. It was normal life. It was their entire society was built upon slavery. So it's kind of like getting mad at the German civilians for putting down Jews. Yeah, it was a bad thing they did, but that was their reality, and they just didn't know any better. And I'm sure there's things that we do now that history is going to judge us for as well. So you just kind of have to live with it. But it's an interesting perspective. You don't hear very much about the Southern side of things and how terrible it was for the South. Maybe they had it coming. Maybe it was God's way of giving them what they deserved. But either way, it's still really horrible. And it's just a really interesting book. I talked a little more on Gone with the Wind than I meant to, but I can't stop on that book. I just love it so much. So anyway, that is my coffee book tag. I am going to tag anyone who would like to do this. Go for it. It's a really fun one. I'm ready to go get some coffee right now because I need to wake up. I hope everybody has a great day. I will talk to you later. Bye.